middle of a not so simple part. That's okay. On $75B, Ayin Hey Amud Beis. Yeah. So it's about 10, 11 lines from the bottom. Now we're at the end of analyzing a brisa that came up on the previous Amud, previous page, which was comparing two parts of the Torah, and it referred to it in a very cryptic way. It said that we're comparing. How do you know that you make lamata kilamala, below like above? And it says the word zima here, the word zima there. So therefore you learn it out. The question is, what is this below and above? So yesterday we saw Abai tried to do it generationally, and today Rav Ashi is going to argue on that. He says below and above doesn't necessarily mean generationally, but it means really below and above in terms of severity of punishment. So says, 1 second. So yeah, Rav Ashi Amar La'olam Kedekatani. You don't need to change the words of the brisa like we did yesterday. Really, you can keep it that it means lamata. You're making below like above. Umai lamata. What does it mean below? Lamata be'isser. Lamata be'isser. It means it's lower in terms of severity of punishment. Okay, so according to Rav Ashi, so let's see what that means in practically. So, ima he, just like by a woman, aim ima asura, the mother of her mother-in-law, which we learned out was one of the people that's liable to get burned. So af hu aim ima asura. We should learn that his own grandmother should also be prohibited, just like her grandmother, which is farther. It's lamata. It's farther removed from him. So too his own grandmother should be prohibited. So once again, just there's a little bit of a gray area in the middle. Rashi fills in for us. The actual Gzeira Shava that's being learned out is the following: that you're making a mother of a mother-in-law, or a mother of a father-in-law, which are considered limata. They're farther. They're also farther removed, but they're like a mother-in-law, and they both will get burnt. That's what we want to learn out. And on that, we're asking, well, hold on. If the wife's grandmother is going to get burnt, then yours should also. You should also get executed for your own grandmother, and we know that's not true. One's own grandmother is only a rabbinical prohibition. One's own grandmother is not biblically prohibited. So yeah. So now, that's the question on this. If that's true that you're learning out that your wife's grandparents, meaning your mother-in-law's mother or your father-in-law's mother, are prohibited just like a mother-in-law, then you should also apply that same logic to your own grandmother, and that's not true. Why is that not true? So Amar Abai is simple. He says Amar Kra imchahi mishum imo tamachayva v'yetamachayva mishum aim imo. Special verse in the Torah says, for your mother you get punished, but not for your mother's mother. Okay, so right now Rav Ashi, so far so good. Your wife's grandparents, whether it's your mother-in-law's mother or your father-in-law's mother, are learned out from your mother-in-law. That the three, that if you have relations with either one of them, they're all going to get sreifa, burnt. Now, here comes Rava and throws in a little bit of a monkey wrench. So Rava says the following: there's two different ways you learn a Gzeira Shava. Very interesting, right? A Gzeira Shava is always two parts of the Torah that you're connecting through one word being extra and open for interpretation, and another word being extra open for interpretation. Let's say you have Parsha A and Parsha B, you have section A and section B, and you're learning from section A to, right? So do you just learn one detail, just that one law? You're learning from section A to section B? Or no, or you're applying the two areas and you're making them equal, so to speak. Everything that applies to section A, that whole, just copy and paste that to section B. So in Hebrew, that's called Amar Rava, Bein Lamand Amar Don Mina Umina, Bein La Amar Don Mina Uki Basra. So Don Mina Umina is to learn out from here to there. So you meaning you're learning out the entire section A and applying it to section B. And therefore, for example, if you find that a lady is prohibited and you learn it out from section A to section B, so you're not only going to learn that she's prohibited, you're going to learn the punishment she gets is going to be the same, right? All the details are going to be the same. You're going to compare the two sections equally. So that's called don minomina. Yes, exactly. Take all the peklach with it, exactly. Ubein la'amar don mina va'uki basra. There's another way to learn is that no, don mina, you're taking one detail from section A, applying it to section B. However, va'uki basra, but it's going to have its own rules now. Now that you're in section B, you're governed by the laws of section B. You're not applying all of section A to section B. Rather, you're just taking one thing, and then whatever it says by section B, you're going to apply your own laws to it. Okay. So now let's see what this means. So Rava says whether you learn it one way in the Gzeir Shava, either way, lo asya. Either way, yeah. So either way, you're not going to be able to learn. You're not going to be able to learn what your wife's grandmother. Your own grandmother? No, her grandmother. Whose grandmother? Your own grandmother. Okay, one second. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. According to both of these ways to apply the Gzeir Shav, so once again, we're applying two sections. One section is your wife's family, and we're trying to apply that to your own grandmother. So now, Leman da Amar Don Mina Umina, the opinion that learns out in general, Gzeir Shava means you're taking all of section A and putting it transfer over to section B. So Mahi, just like the wife, Aim Ima Asura, her mother's mother is asur to you. So af hunami aim imo asur. So to your own grandmother should be asur. Now, you've applied one area to another area. Umina. Now you're going to take everything with it. So just like your wife's grandmother gets burnt, umina mahi bisreifa. So af hunami bisreifa. So he should also get sreifa for his own grandmother. Yeah. Okay. Now let's see if that logic's going to go through. Just like your wife's grandmother, you get streifa, you get burnt. So to your own grandmother, she gets streifa also. So now, Leman da Amar Sreifa Chamura. Remember, there's two opinions. Rabbi Shimon and the Chachamim from many daf ago. Which one is more stringent, burning or stoning? I think Jules said he wants neither, but either way, no, thank you. Okay. Said it so pleasantly. So no, thank you. So which one is more strict? So now, Leman Damar Sreifa Chamura. Let's say you say that burning is stricter than stoning. Okay. Now we're gonna have a question. Ikela Mifrach. So if burning is more strict than stoning, Malehi Shekain Ima Bisreifa. The mother-in-law is Sreifa, and your own mother is only Skila. Tomar Behu She'imo Beskila. How could it be that your mother-in-law, okay, don't answer, but how could it be that your mother-in-law is a more strict punishment than your own mother? Yeah. So that doesn't make sense. It should be the opposite. Your mother is much closer to you in terms of your relationship. She's from your own flesh and blood, not through marriage. So that's one. The ode, Imo Beskila, your own mother is Skila, and now you want your grandmother to be Sreifa. So why should that be true? If Sreifa is more strict then skila of burning is more strict than stoning, how is your grandmother stricter to you than your mother? That doesn't make sense. That's 2. Third question. So the ode, mahi, just like the area of the Torah of your wife's family, there's no difference in punishment between you and your mother-in-law and you and your grandmother-in-law. They both get burnt. There should be no difference between your mother and your grandmother. The ode, mahi lo chilakta bo bein ima le'em ima av hunami lo tachlok bo bein imo le'em imo. And that's not true, because you want to tell me now that your mother is stoned, you get stoned, and the grandmother you get burnt. So 3 questions on this idea of why we cannot learn out your own grandmother from that other area of the Torah of your wife's grandmother. Okay, now go the other way. If you say that stoning is stricter than burning, then the first 2 questions fall apart. The first 2 questions were all about how could the in-laws be stricter than your own mother, and how could your grandmother be stricter than your mother? Those 2 fall apart because now stoning is stricter. So your mother is stricter than your mother-in-law, and she's stricter than your grandmother. However, the 3rd question remains. The 3rd question is, if you're learning from one section to the other section, it should be equal. Just like over there, the grandmother-in-law and the mother-in-law is the same punishment. Your mother and your grandmother should also be the same punishment. So from this last 3rd question, there's no way out. You're stuck. Okay. So now the other way. The other way is, let's say you only are learning, the way you learn Xer Shava is one detail, but then you learn a prohibition. Okay, I see over there that my grandmother-in-law is prohibited. Must be that my grandma is also prohibited. But my grandmother is going to be governed by her own rules in section B. We're learning one thing from section A, but then the details don't get carried along with it. Just the prohibition. So let's see. Don't mean to learn from there, but then it's going to have its own rules. Learn it out from its own place. So now, mahi aim ima asura. So afhunami aim ima asura. Let's say, okay, so my wife, the grandmother, is prohibited to me. So too my own grandmother should also be prohibited to me. The oki basra though, but now we're going to split. Hasam hu de bisreifa. She gets sreifa, but hacha hu beskila. But here, the grandmother I'll get stoned for having relations with the grandmother. Kida eshkechan be'imo, just like I find with my own mother. So that's an example. You're learning out grandmother from another section of the Torah. Section A to section B. But section B has its own rules. The mother you get stoned for. So the grandmother you also get stoned for. We don't carry over the grandmother-in-law's rules to your own grandmother. I guess next family gathering we have what to talk about. Yeah? Grandkids, okay, just kidding. So yeah, great discussion. So yeah, Torah. So okay. So mahi emi basura avunami emi masura but oki basura hasim the besreifa valaka beskila. Fine. Kidesh beimo. So now let's see if that logic is going to go through. So lemandam or sreifa chamura. If you hold that burning is stricter than stoning, so you're going to get stuck. Your in-laws are stricter than your own blood relatives. The grandmother-in-law gets burnt. Wow. Perfect timing. The grandmother-in-law you get burned for that, right, Jared? So, and your own grandmother you get stoned for. So, ika lemifrach. So, how could that be? Ma'alehi shekain ima b'sreifa. Ma'alehi shekain ima b'sreifa. Tomar behu she'ima b'skila. If burning is more strict, so how is your mother-in-law going to be stricter than your own mother? V'od hu kihi mahi lo chilakta ba. Bein bita le'ein bita, just like your mother-in-law and your mother of your mother-in-law, it's the same punishment. So afhu, so to here your mother and your grandmother should be the same punishment. Lo tachlak bo bein. Sorry, just like over there, your wife's daughter is the same punishment as the mother-in-law. So to your own daughter should be the same punishment as your mother. Bein bita le'ein imo, and we know that's not true. Okay, ulamandam or skila chamura, same thing as before. If you hold that stoning is stricter than burning, so then the first question is not a question, but this last question is still going to be a question, that the daughter of your wife and your mother-in-law have the same punishment, and yet your mother and your daughter have a different punishment. Yeah. So now, Imahu kalaso asur, just like you are prohibited to your daughter-in-law, so afhi kalaso asur, you should also be prohibited to the wife's daughter-in-law. If that comparison is going to go through, that you're comparing the two parshas. Amar Abai, Amar Kran, no. Eishes binchahi, mishum eishes bincha atam mechayvo, v'etam mechayvo mishum eishes bina. You're only prohibited for the wife, so of your, so imagine the lady has a son from another marriage, so her son's wife you're prohibited in, but her daughter, but her daughter-in-law you're not prohibited in. So that's why, even though we're comparing the two parshas, but we're not going to prohibit her daughter-in-law. We're only going to prohibit Sorry, we're only going to prohibit the wife of your son. Sorry, Eishes bincha he mishum Eishes bincha tamchav. You're only prohibited on the wife of your son, and you're not prohibited on her daughter-in-law. Her daughter-in-law, right? So she has a son from somewhere else, and he gets married. So you're not prohibited. I mean, at least in terms of capital punishment, you're not going to be prohibited to her. Okay. Comes Rava and says, Rava Amar. So now, before we were trying to learn how to grandmother, and we rejected it. Now we're trying to learn. A daughter-in-law. We should learn that just like you're prohibited to your daughter-in-law, so too you should be prohibited to your wife's daughter-in-law. But let's see if so. Abai says no, it's not going to work because only Eishes bincha. The Torah says only the wife of your son you're prohibited to, and not the wife of her son. So your wife's daughter-in-law. She has a son from another marriage. That guy gets married. So now Rava is going to do the same thing he did earlier. Rava Amar, whether you learn at Xer Shava, where you apply the entire section A to section B, or whether you just apply the one halacha, but then it's governed by its own rules, either way we're going to see it's going to come out, that's not going to work out. Rava Amar, Bein L'Manar Domino, Bein L'Manar Domino, Boki Basra, Lo Asya. It's not going to go. Let's break it down. Leman da Amar Domina Umina, the one who holds that all Xer Shavas, you apply the entire section with all of its details to the other section. So now, what does that mean for us? Mahu kalaso asura, your daughter-in-law is prohibited. Afinami kalaso asura, you should also be prohibited to her daughter-in-law. Umina, and now learn from there. Mahu beskila, just like me to my daughter-in-law is punishable by stoning. Afhinami beskila, so too me to her daughter-in-law should also be punishable by stoning. So now, what's wrong with that? Maybe that's good. No. Lemand amar skila chamura. If skila is stricter than burning, according to that opinion, ika lemifrach. You can ask a question. Malahu shekain ima beskila, tomar behi sheima besreifa. So if stoning is stricter than burning, so what's the question? One's own mother, you're liable for stoning. Tomar behi she'ima besreifa. Okay, 1 second. What's wrong with this? 1 second. Oh, yeah, correct. So if you say stoning is stricter than burning, so that what's going to happen to your wife's daughter-in-law, you're liable to be stoned. But to your wife's mother, your mother-in-law, you're going to get burnt. How could her daughter-in-law be a stricter punishment than her mother? That doesn't make sense. You're closer related to your mother-in-law than you are to your wife's son from another marriage's daughter. Oh, okay, fine. So that's one question. The ode bita bisreifa, the kalasa beskila. So the wife's daughter, you get burnt, sreifa. But the daughter-in-law is going to be stoned. Once again, to your wife's daughter, you're closer than the daughter-in-law. Yeah. So to that we say, what do you mean? Hu ba'atzma yochiach. You yourself can answer this question. The bito b'sreifa, your own daughter, you're liable for to get burnt, and your own daughter-in-law, you're liable for skila. So that's not such a question because you find the same discrepancy by your own children and daughter-in-law, which is interesting. Why that's true. Ella mahu lo chilakta bo bein imo lekalaso. Just like one, there's no difference between one's own daughter to one's mother. He gets stoned for both of them, whether he has relations with his daughter or with his mother. It's punishable by stoning. So, sorry, mahu lo chilakta bo bein imo lekalaso. Just like one's daughter-in-law and one's mother, they're both liable by stoning. Afhi. So too by your wife,
another
by the
variety of coffee that may work better for the
Charles, how you doing? Oh, so
sorry, Zoom just muted you and unmuted me.
Charles, we can still hear you, which is great, but you should just know. So yeah, so just like you, the person, Ruvain, his daughter-in-law and his mother is the same punishment. So it should be the same thing if you're learning the two parshas from one to the other. By the wife, it should be the same thing. The daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law should be the same punishment, and yet that's not true. Oh, so now, according to Lamandamar Sreifa Chamura, Kasha Lo Nidona. So now, same as before. If you learn that burning is stricter than stoning, so the first two questions are not going to be questions anymore. But that last question of comparing your daughter-in-law is the same punishment as your mother, it should be the same, it should hold true. If you're learning Xer Shabbat, it should hold true by the wife. You're punishable to her daughter-in-law, should be the same punishment as to her mother, and yet that's not true. One is Sreifa, the mother-in-law, and now we're trying to say that her daughter-in-law is going to be stoning. So from that question, we don't have an answer. Okay. One more. Ulamanda Amar Don Minava Uki Basra. Now let's say you learn out Xer Shava, where you just learn one detail, but not the whole section gets transferred over. So let's see what that means. Mahu Kalasu Asura, Avhi Kalasu Asura. Just like you to your daughter-in-law are prohibited, so too you to her daughter-in-law should be prohibited. However, don't learn out the same punishments. But Oki Basra, establish that prohibition of you to your wife's daughter-in-law in its place. See what rules govern your wife's family, and they'll get those rules, right? So that's the difference. In your wife's family, the rules seem to be burning. That seems to be the prevalent punishment by your wife's family. So just as I'm learning a prohibition from my family, my daughter-in-law, I'm applying it to her family, but she has her own rules. It's like, it's like, I remember my Rebbe one time said, son makes a shidduch, right? He introduces two people. But then he thinks he's also their marriage counselor. He's like, you're not the marriage. Your job is done. You introduce them and you walk away. You don't have to you don't stay involved in everything, right? Or you give someone a present. You can't determine how they use it. They use it the way they want to use it. For Pesach, not for Pesach. So to here, you're learning out from your family the prohibition of you to your daughter-in-law. You're applying it to your wife's daughter-in-law. Now, the details of how that's going to play out, you're done. Your family is governed by skila, by stoning. Her family is governed by sreifa. Let her have her own punishments that apply to her family. So let's see if that's going to hold water. Well, we know it's not, but let's see why not. So, hasam hu de b'skila v'hacha b'sreifa. You in your own family, you to your mother, you to your daughter-in-law, stoning. Her family, you to her family, is burning. Just like the mother-in-law is going to get punished by burning, by sreifa, so too the you to her daughter-in-law is going to be sreifa also. Okay, let's see. So lamanda marskila chamura, if you hold that stoning is stricter than burning, ikala mifrach, you can ask the question, malahu shekain imo beskila, tomar behi she'ima besreifa. So if stoning is stricter than burning, so then, just like you to your mother, you're going to get stoned. So tomar behi she'ima b'sreifa. 1 second. What's that question? One second. It's supposed to make sense. 1 second. Hasan with the b'skila. Aval hacha b'sreifa. Aval hacha b'sreifa. What does it say, Steve? Yeah, but what? Once again, we're learning out a daughter-in-law. You're prohibited to your daughter-in-law, and we're learning out that prohibition to your wife's daughter-in-law. And we're saying just like you're prohibited to your daughter-in-law, she's prohibited to her daughter-in-law. You to your daughter-in-law is going to be stoning. You to your wife's daughter-in-law is going to be burning, right? Yeah, that we're on the same page? No. We're on the same page. Yeah, we're on the same page. So now we're asking a question. If you hold that skila is chamura, if you hold that skila is stricter than streifa, so you're gonna have a question. Ikala mifrach maluhu shekain imo beskila. Just like you, too, your mother is by stoning. Tomar behi she'ima besreifa. But you to your mother-in-law is going to be burning. That's good. What's wrong with that? Something's off, wasn't it?
So regardless of which penalty is more severe, the two ways of implementing quotation and place in its context with it yield conflicting results. There's grounds for rejecting the sterilization altogether.
Oh, sorry. 1 second. I don't know. Yeah. Okay, so yeah. Okay, good. Asahu, your daughter-in-law, you get skila, good. But the wife's daughter-in-law, you get streifa, good. Fine. L'manam skila chamura, ikala mifrach malahu shekain ima beskila. How can you compare the two? Why? Because your own mother is beskila. Tomar behi she'ima b'streifa. 1 second. Okay, it's a funny way. Okay, it's a funny thing. We're just saying that maybe the difference is like this. You to your mother's beskila, so therefore, which is very strict. So therefore, and you to your daughter-in-law's beskila, that's very strict. However, but you to your mother-in-law is a less stricter punishment of sreifa. So how do you know that you're prohibited to the daughter-in-law? Maybe you're only prohibited to your daughter-in-law because to your own mother it's very strict. It's skila. So therefore, to your own family, you can learn out you to your daughter-in-law. That's also very strict by skila. But how do you know that? How do you know that by a less strict punishment like sreifa, the prohibition to the daughter would also apply? Maybe we only find daughter-in-laws by very severe punishments like stoning, but we don't find it by less severe punishments like by sreifa. Okay. The other question that we keep asking, Mahu chilaktabo bein bito lekalaso. So afhi tachlok ba bein bito lekalaso. So if you're going to compare the two sections, so then just like mahu chilaktabo bein bito lekalaso, one's own daughter and one's own daughter-in-law are going to be different. Right, are going to be different because one's kalaso, one's daughter-in-law is going to be stricter than one's own daughter. So too over there by your wife's family, there should be a different punishment by your wife's daughter to your wife's daughter-in-law. Just like by you, your daughter and your daughter-in-law are different punishments. There should be different punishments over there also. And yet, if you learn like this, they all get streifa. It's only one punishment. So when you're comparing the two sections, it doesn't add up. Your daughter and daughter-in-law are different punishments. But yet by your wife, it's going to be the same punishment. So that can't be. Okay. So now, ulaman damar nami streifa chamura. So once again, if you hold that burning is stricter than stoning, so the first question falls away, and you're able to learn out the prohibition of a daughter-in-law. However, the second question of having the same punishment for your wife's daughter and your wife's daughter-in-law does not parallel your daughter and your daughter-in-law. And since it doesn't parallel your daughter and your daughter-in-law, it must be it's flawed, and therefore we cannot learn out the prohibition of you to your wife's daughter-in-law. Okay, fine, good. Next part. Bito ma'anusaso minayin. So a person, God forbid, rapes a lady and has a daughter from there. What's the source that she's prohibited to you? Amar Abai kal v'chomer. Very simple. A kal v'chomer. If for your granddaughter you're prohibited, for sure for your daughter. Al bas bito on al kal v'chomer al bas bito anush al bito l'kol shekain. For sure for one's own daughter, you're for sure going to get punished. So says the Gemara, one of our favorite lines, that right? You can't punish through logic. You can't derive capital punishments, right? You can't punish really any punishment through the use of logic. It has to be that it's written somewhere. Says the Gemara, Gilui milsa ba'almahu. It's not a kal v'chomer. It's just the Torah tells you explicitly that your granddaughter is prohibited to you. Why? Where does that prohibition stem from? Where does it come from? So it comes from why? Because you're a relative, you're a blood relative to them. So included in the parsha of a granddaughter, included in that parsha is also your daughter. The whole reason why the granddaughter is prohibited is because she's related to you. So how is she related to you? She's your daughter or your son's daughter. So therefore that parsha shows me not one detail, oh, my granddaughter is prohibited to me. There's a whole rationale behind it. She's prohibited to you because she's your relative, which means that any of your relatives, meaning if your daughter is also going to be prohibited to you. If the Torah is so strict on your blood relatives being prohibited to you, as we see by the granddaughter, who is derived from your daughter, so for sure the Torah says that your own daughter is prohibited to you. So it's not so much that you're learning logic and bringing out a halacha from the outside and applying it to the Torah. It's we see from the Torah itself it must be included, because the whole logic of a granddaughter is because she's a blood relative to you. So for sure included in that parsha is one's own daughter. So Rava doesn't like this. Rava Amar Amarli Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi Asya Heina Asya Zima Zima. So a double Gzeira Shava that basically, just like we have explicitly by the wife's family, it says her daughter and her granddaughter. So we learn out to one's own family the word Heina. Once we have a prohibition to now from your wife's family to your family that you're also prohibited to your daughter, the same way you're prohibited to your wife's daughter, then we can learn a Gzeira Shava of Zima Zima that will tell you that you get burnt for having relations with your own daughter. So first you have to apply the law that you're even prohibited to your daughter, that you found by your wife's family. It says there explicitly that you're prohibited to your wife's daughter. You apply Gzeira Shava that now you're prohibited to your daughter as well. What punishment do you get? Now that it's in our parsha that you and your daughter are prohibited to each other, you apply Zima Zima and you learn out a Gzeira Shava that you're going to get burnt for your own daughter. Yeah. Okay. Tani Avu the Rabbi Oven. So the father Rabbi Oven taught the following: Lefi shalola madnu lebito manusaso. So lefi shalola madnu lebito manusaso. Hotrach hakasav lomar ubas ish kohen. So it sounds like a third interpretation. Yeah. So he says it doesn't say explicitly in the Torah that you're prohibited to, according to him, that you're prohibited to your own daughter from a lady that you raped. So ubas ish kohen, but it says by the parsha of a daughter of a kohen, it says ubas ish kohen, the daughter of a man who's a kohen. So now, what's that ish? It could just say ubas kohen, the daughter of a kohen. What's ubas ish kohen? What's that word ish? So now, ima bas kohen, a bas kohen herself, the daughter of a kohen, who has illicit relations is besreifa. Her punishment is through burning. The ain bola besreifa, but the man she has relations with, he does not get burnt. So av bito manusaso, he besreifa, the ain bola besreifa. I guess we're learning the punishment from there. So just like the Bas Kohen, she gets burnt and not the man she has relations with. So too him himself, only the daughter will get burnt, but not the one she has relations with, which in this case is her father. So Amar Abaye, Amar Kra, no. Why? That parsha, the section that talks about a daughter of a Kohen who gets burnt, says she disgraced her father. She profaned her father. So Misha mechaleles esavia, only the one who profanes her father, yatzdazu she'avia mechalala. But here the father profaned her. He had relations with her. So therefore he's not going to get that same punishment. Yeah, it's only the daughter who profanes her father is punishable by burning. But the one who father profanes her is not punishable by burning. Okay, so says Rava Amar Bishlama Hasam, when it came to a regular Bas Kohen, a daughter of a Kohen has relations with somebody that she's not allowed to have relations with. Either she's already married, let's say that's the easiest case. She's married already, and she goes and cheats on her husband with somebody else. There the halacha is she gets burnt, but not the one that she cheated with. He does not get burnt. Afikte Medina de Bas Kohen, Vukimta Adina de Bas Yisrael. There we took his punishment, and we, so to speak, it's because of a pasuk, but we removed it from the parsha of sreifa, of burning, and we established it as a regular case of someone who cheats on his wife. He's going to get, I believe, strangulation. So that's over there. But hacha, where do you put the punishment for the father that had relations with his own daughter? So we say the daughter gets burnt from the section of the Torah that talks about a Bas Kohen who gets burnt. We're learning from there that one's own daughter, she gets burnt. What about him? What does he get? So hacha adina deman mukmesla. So to who should we establish his lacha? Where should we put it? So we say adina de mukmesla. I mean, you can't establish him as if he had relations with a girl who's single, because a girl who's single is not going to have a death penalty. So therefore. So therefore what? So since we can't do that, so therefore what? He must get burnt. So we can't apply him. We can't apply his punishment to a case as if he had relations with a single girl. So what do we have? What do we do with it? We just don't agree with this halacha. Sounds like Rabbi disagrees with this halacha. Okay. Yeah, so I think Rabbi disagrees with this halacha because he says you can't compare the two. By a regular case of a Bas Kohen, a daughter of a Kohen who had illicit relations with somebody, at the end of the day, the guy had relations with a married woman. So we're going to give him the punishment as if he had relations with a regular married woman. Not and not the fact that she's a Bas Kohen. But in this case, when the father had relations with his own daughter, so if you're following the same pattern, so where should we put him? What different punishment should we give him? So it must be we're going to give him the same punishment because that she'll get, and it sounds like he will get burnt, I believe. What?
Yeah.
And he'll get the same thing as her? He'll get burnt. Yeah. Fine. So, okay. Yeah. So now, this is all the punishment, but every punishment needs to have a warning in the Torah. So azhara lebita manasaso minayin. Where's the warning of a father who's going to have relations with the daughter from a lady that he raped? So now, bishmala bayi v'rava, very easy. Mehechet nafkaluhu onesh, mehasam nafkalu azhara. So earlier, Abai and Rava said wherever you learn out the punishment. So from that section of one's own granddaughter, whatever her punishment is, it's going to be the same punishment, the same. Just like over there, there's a punishment and a warning. So too, you learned out the punishment from the granddaughter. You learn out the warning from the granddaughter too. Wherever it says in the Torah that you're warned for your granddaughter, included in there is that you're warned for your daughter as well. But according to Tanya Abud Rabbi Oven, so who learns this out from that a daughter of a Kohen gets burnt, where does he learn out the prohibition, the warning for someone having relations with their daughter? Amar Rabbi Ilah, Amar Kra, from the following verse. Al techalel es bitchola hasnosa. It's interesting. The Torah says you can't take your daughter and profane her by making her into a zona. So that, according to the Gemara, now is the prohibition, according to the father Rabbi Oven, that you cannot go and disgrace your daughter by having relations with her. That's the warning, and the punishment is, like we said earlier, is going to be burning. Okay. It says the Gemara, Masla Rabbi Yaakov Achva de Rav Acha, Rabbi Yaakov, the brother of Rav Acha bar Yaakov. It says that verse about not profaning your own daughter. You're using it for that to warn you about having a relation with your own daughter. So you need this verse for the following brisa. What does it say in the following brisa? Don't profane your daughter by causing her to do something promiscuous. So what's that talking about? Yachol b'kohen amesias bito levi. You would have thought maybe it's referring to a Kohen. Don't let her marry a Levi or a Yisrael. That would be a certain level of profanity. Keep her in the priesthood. Keep her in the club. So hakasa medaber Talmud lomer lehaznosa. So lehaznosa is a lashon of a zona. Something that's people translate as prostitute. It's not really true. But a zona is someone who has relations with somebody that she's not allowed to. Bechilul shebeznus hakasa medaber. So it's talking about specifically some kind of level of znus, not just marrying a Yisrael or marrying a Levi, but something much more severe. So what's that? B'moser es bito shelo l'shem isha. You take your daughter and you marry her and you give her off to somebody not for the sake of marriage. That's like prostitution. You take your daughter and you say, here, he'll go have relations with this guy. That the Torah is warning you, do not do that. Do not take your daughter and give her to someone else and say, he'll go have relations with her. That the Torah says do not do. If that's true, al tachel, just have one lamed. My al techalel, two lameds. Oh, shma min atart. You can learn both. You can learn one prohibition tells you don't give off the daughter to somebody not for marriage, and the second prohibition is don't profane your daughter by having relations with her. You yourself can't do that. Again, there's a period in 2 lines. Okay, we'll stop here.
Good timing. This all fits with Einstein's theory of relativity. Relative